and I just really got connected to characters. It's written kind of like a science narration, like a, what am I trying to say? All right, you. Hello everybody, my name is Kelsey and we're about to get very, very nerdy with favorites by month. I have a baby nearby, so if you hear things, that's going to be a constant in my life. So this is a video idea concept thing that I've done for a couple of years, where I've gone through every month of the year and I've picked a favorite book that I read during that month. I usually do like a halfway check-in, but I didn't do that this year because, well, for lots of reasons, but mainly because the middle of the year is when I gave birth. So I didn't have time to do lots of things in the middle of the year, and then just kind of like, this year kind of snowballed, honestly. We are here to talk about favorites by month for most of this year. And speaking of favorites for the year, this is a great segue, if you will, into the partner of today's video, which is yet again Louisa. I have partnered with them quite a few times, and we are doing a winter sale this time. So of course I have a fun link and everything down below, but I love their pieces. So I recently got these little hoops that I am currently wearing, and they're just very subtle, and I love their jewelry. And then I also, in a previous video, got this necklace, but because I love this style so much, I'm a big silver girly. I've talked about it. Yeah? You want to say things about jewelry too? So I talked about it before that I'm a big silver girly, and I like that Louisa has that option. But recently I've been getting into gold, honestly. And so I have the gold version of this necklace, as well as the blue version. Honestly, I've got all the versions of this necklace because it's the one I'm obsessed with the most. So Louisa is just an amazing, sustainable, beautiful brand. They have really unique and small pieces if you like things dainty. There are some other things. There are tons of rings and bracelets as well. There are different earring packs and necklaces. You can stack necklaces. You can do anything that you want. That is your style. So I love them. They're super sustainable. I have, like I said, gotten really into gold lately, and I've recently moved, and I ended up wearing this necklace the entire time we moved, which, fun fact, we were on the 3rd floor apartment. There is no elevator. So they worked really well because I was wearing it the entire time and totally forgot. So honestly, I feel like that's a very good testament. So I love them. I will not stop raving about them. And thank you again so much, Louisa, for partnering with me. I will leave a link and everything fun that you can find it down in the description. So don't forget to check that out, because I do have a fun link that you can use, as well as % off just in general for their winter sale. So great time to get gifts for Christmas if you're like me and have put them off. All right, starting in January, my favorite book in January was Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. This is part of her STEM romance series. It's not the most recent one, because she did come out with another one this year, but it was the most recent one, I think, at the time. And I am just a sucker for an Ali Hazelwood book. I have all of her books, honestly, at this point, even the YA book, and I am not in like a YA mood. I have not been in a YA mood for a while, and I am excited about that one too. But she just has this very fun writing style that is very fluffy. It has its romantic elements, but also has a really hard-hitting topic, because again, it's all about STEM. So it's a lot of women in STEM and the misogyny and sexism and stuff like that that goes along with it. And so it does not shy away from those topics, partnering that with the fun, fluffy romance. And I just love them. I just love her writing. She also has a very humorous way of making her characters. They have very funny thoughts. I just, honestly, overall, 10 out of 10 recommend her. I know people who are like not the biggest of romance fans and love her stuff. So I think she is a testament over the genres if you will. If you're someone who is possibly maybe interested in getting into romance and you are like STEM brained and really like the science elements, they really go hard at this. But also at the same time, if you are not a sciencey person, they put it in terms that you completely understand. This book follows our main two characters, Elsie and Jack. And Elsie is a adjunct professor. That's what it is. She's a theoretical physicist and adjunct professor, and of course it doesn't pay very well. So on the side, she kind of moonlights as a pretend girlfriend. And one of her clients that uses her a lot, she is like used to going to family things, and then finds out that this promotion, I think it's promotion or award or something that she is up for, his brother is part of that. And also it says on the back, his brother is one of the ones who is credited for ruining her mentor's career. And so like he finds out that she's not who she says she is. So I just really like her writing. I like these characters. I think out of her romances, this is my least favorite romance, my most favorite couple, if I remember correctly. So love them. It's been a while, but I would love to get back into some Allie Hazelwood. Actually, as you have seen, I have plans to read an Allie Hazelwood book in December. So that would be very exciting. And I just love her stuff. I just love her stuff. In February, my favorite book was The Measure by Nikki Erlich. This book is a sci-fi, contemporary sci-fi, realistic maybe sci-fi. It is definitely a book that I didn't think too much of going in. It topic-wise, I was like, man, this could go either way. I wasn't really sure. I read this because of your recommendations. I was finishing out the last of my 4 vlogs from the previous year where I read your recommendations. And so I picked it up because of that. Otherwise, I don't think I would have picked it up. And it kind of opened this new type of sci-fi, again, like a realistic sci-fi is the best way that I can describe it, where like it's our world. I know there's a better term for it, I just can't think of it, but it's like our world. It could realistically in theory happen, but it's like very science-based, and there's something like a twist to it. So this one takes place again in our world, and one day everyone wakes up with a box on their front door, or for their front door, and inside said box is a string, and based on the length of your string, that's how long you have to live. And so because of that, this opens up like long versus short stringers, what that means, support groups for short stringers. There's a lot of science that goes into whether or not, like how long the string actually is and what that means, and they can like determine how long you actually do have left to live. There's some people who never open the box and don't want to know. There is a lot of government involvement. Everything you could think of that people have a conversation about happens in this book. It's written in a very like science nonfiction style, very like but like very biographical, a little bit of like what's going on as third person. You follow a bunch of different people, but it's like it feels like someone on the outside looking at this society and what's going on. And usually that would not work for me, but it did. I really liked the way it was written. I was afraid that I was going to like not get connected to the characters because of said writing style, and that was not a problem in the slightest. It made sense for the story, and I loved this book, and it opened up some more authors for me, and I've definitely read some things that are in the same vein as this book because of this book. So that was my favorite in February. In March, I did that huge vlog where I read like 30 something like mangas, I think. And my favorite one for sure was the first volume of Happy Marriage by Maki Injoji. Sure, I'm sure I butchered that completely. This one is a fake dating of sorts. He's the head of this, he's a company president, and she is just kind of like a lowly worker. Their grandparents know each other, and so his grandpa wants them to get married because of something that her grandfather did for him in his past, and so like they agree to make him happy. And it's one of the better romances that I have read. Have I continued with the series? No, because I'm having a hard time finding it. But I want to. And there was a while that I was trying to not buy any books. So in 2025, I'm hoping that maybe I can figure out where I can read a few more of these, because I'm pretty sure my library doesn't have any copies of these. Or if they do, it's not like the next one. So it's definitely a series I want to invest in because I really enjoyed the first one. Like I said, the fake dating situation, and that's usually works for me really well in a like romance book novel style. Wasn't quite sure how it was going to work in a manga because like there are some differences culture-wise, and sometimes things that should work for me don't, but in this case it definitely did. The spice was there. There's not actually a lot of spice. Actually, there's very, very little spice, but there's like a lot of pining. There's a lot of tension that's going to turn into spice. Pretty sure when I got this book it was saran wrapped, which means that it's adult content. So very excited to see where this goes in the future volumes, but this one was my favorite out of the ridiculously long manga vlog that you're welcome to go watch if you haven't already. I was very proud of that because it did make me like read a bunch of books that I've had on my TBR for a while, including this one, and I loved it. All right, in April, I read Happy Place by Emily Henry. It was for the Magical Readathon. I don't remember what prompt it was for, but I just picked it up. I love Emily Henry, so I wasn't surprised that I was going to enjoy this book. I was surprised by how much it hit me. This is a story about 6 friends who kind of like, it's really a story about 3 girls and their significant others, and how they have stayed in connection. They go on a vacation every single summer, and they live like all over the country. They met in college, and they're all over the country, and they've started to like drift apart a little bit. So like this summer is the last summer for the house that they have been using. It's going on the market, and so they will not be able to use it anymore. And so this is kind of like the big last hurrah. However, our main character, who's named Harriet, and her significant other, Wynn, were engaged and didn't really tell anybody, but broke up. And so they are back at this vacation. And to make everyone feel better, because again, last year they kind of want to go out with a bang, they pretend that they're still together. And so it's a fake engagement, fake dating situation. This hit like 2 months before I gave birth. We have a friend group of ours that is 6 friends that we met in college and like still continue to be a part of each other's lives. We still hang out. We still go do things, even though we live all over the country. Well, we live all over one side of the country. And at the very end of this book, there's a powwow between some of the friends about like one set of friends is getting married and one set of friends is thinking about inviting adopting a kid. And so like it's them talking about this friendship group and how even though like lives are changing, jobs are changing, family dynamics are changing, their friendship is still going to be the same. And that just hit at the right time. So I was incredibly emotional while reading this. This is definitely the Emily Henry book that hit me the hardest, but also like the best romance by her. Like the tension between our main 2 characters was immaculate. I was never really a big fan of second chance romances. I never had a problem with them, but I was more of an Emily, like an enemies to lovers kind of person. And this made me rethink the whole second chance situation. It's making me think that maybe second chance is for me. So there's like, take away my very emotional connection to it, it is still probably one of her best romances. This is by far my favorite Emily Henry books to date. I have not read her newest one yet, but this was just so good. So yeah, this one was my favorite in April. I would be surprised if we didn't see that in my favorites of the year. But we've had some good books, so what do I know? In May, I picked up Heartless Hunter, which is the first in the Crimson Moth series by Kristen Cisorelli. I picked this up because everybody and their brother was talking about it. I wasn't really sure. I thought I would read it at some point. A lot of people compared it to the Serpent and Dove series, at least the first book in that series, because it is a witch versus witch hunter dynamic. And I was just like, it's gonna be fine. Like, I'm gonna enjoy it. Of course I'm going to enjoy it, but it's gonna be just another, you know, fantasy. I think it's YA, maybe it's new adult, but just another fantasy book that's gonna be good, and I'm gonna enjoy it, and then we're gonna move on. And this took me heart and soul. This is definitely the same vibe as Serpent and Dove, a little, but 1,000 times better. And you guys know that like when Serpent and Dove came out, that I was obsessed with that book. The series got interesting as we continued, but the first book was like really good, and I still stand by really enjoying it when I read it. this is so much better. So we follow our two main characters. One of them is Rune, and the other one is Gideon. Now, Rune is a witch, and it takes place in this world where witches are like bad. No. People hunt them. They hide in the shadows. And Rune basically takes on the disguise of the Crimson Moth, who is this person who is kind of like a superhero-esque figure, and they save witches. And so she is on the hunt to save this one specific witch because this witch knew her grandmother, and like there's a family connection there. Well, Gideon is in charge of the witch hunting soldiers, if you will. Now, no one knows that Rune's a witch except for her best friends, two best friends, and one of said best friends happens to be Gideon's younger brother. She wasn't able to save this witch, and this witch ended up getting captured, and she's trying to figure out where this witch is. She decides that she's going to try to flirt with Gideon in the hopes that he will give up, fall in love with her enough that she can, maybe not, he won't give up the information, but she'll be able to find a way to get said information. And Gideon, on the reverse side of this, is almost sure that Rune is the Crimson Moth and cannot confirm it. And so he tries to romance her for the same reason. And then it's the two of them kind of trying to romance each other. But of course they fall for each other. It's just really good. And like the ending was such a shock of an ending. I just, oh my gosh. And then like his backstory, like there is usually in books like this, where we have something like this, where there's like a witch versus witch hunter dynamic, you can, you know, take that, doesn't have to be like a witch specifically, but that dynamic of like the hunt versus the hunted, there's usually like a little bit of brainwashing on the hunter's part of like, it's a corrupt society. Whereas in this book, he has a history with witches and it makes sense. Like he has a lot of trauma when it comes to witches and what they have done to him in the past. So his reasoning, very solid. So I just am very curious where we're going to go in here because again, the ending was very like climactic and I have questions and I need answers. So we do have a second one. I think it comes out sometime next year and you bet your bottom dollar I'm getting my hand on it because the first one was just so good and I went in expecting to like it but not love it, and I came out of it thinking like this is probably one of the better witch versus witch hunter, hunt versus hunted dynamics, and I just loved it so much. For June, my favorite book was Isabel and the Rogue by Liana de la Rosa. This is the second in the Lunar Sisters series. I had the arc of this and I was able to actually like squeeze it in the month of June. I feel like it might have been the only book that I read in June though. Like I clearly didn't read a lot because June is the month that I ended up giving birth. So I actually read way more than I thought I was going to in June, now that I'm looking through this. Anyway, it was an ebook, so I was afraid I wasn't going to get around to it because ebooks are harder for me to make time for, but I did it and I really enjoyed it. So this one, like I said, is the sequel. It takes place after the first book. This is a series, so that's going to follow the three sisters in this family, but it is a little bit plot based on the first one, so it's not like, it is a companion, but it's also like not a companion because you kind of really need to read the first one for the plot to make sense. And this one, in the first book, Isabel and her two sisters, she's the middle sister of the three, they are from Mexico and their father is really high up in the Mexican government, and it takes place at a time of turmoil, so they are sent to England basically to be kept safe. And then their uncle has some plans and he's hoping to use them in high society to kind of like integrate them, show the English society that they are just like them. By doing so, maybe people in England will help out the Mexican cause. And so that's the reason that they're in England. And this book, Isabel, that we kind of get hints at in the first book, she's a spy. So it follows her, but then it also follows this guy named Sirius, who is an English lord or duke. I can't remember what his title is, but he's English and he's basically doing the same thing. He's trying to spy and get some intel. And so they end up trying to spy on the same person, and it's them working together while they're fighting feelings for each other. And it's just really sweet. And I really like the way it ended because it was one of those things where I was afraid she would give up her dream that she's been living for, like she's looking forward to this entire book. She's working towards getting this one thing. And a lot of times in romance books, that one thing is forgotten because of a guy. And so in this case, that is not the case. She has feelings for this guy. She really cares about him, but she's not like, it's not going to stop her from pursuing the dream that she has wanted. I really liked the way it was written. I'm excited to see the third one. I don't know if we even have a cover or a date. Obviously, it's going to be about the youngest daughter. I just really enjoyed the first two, so I'm excited to see when the third one comes out, but that was my favorite in June. All right, July, my favorite was Kissing Kosher. It may not be anymore. I think there's another book. There's another book that I've seen the cover for, but I can't remember if it's out or not. But at the time I read it, it was the most recent book by the author Jean Meltzer. And this is the author of The Matzo Ball, which I read a couple of years ago and is still like to this day one of my favorite holiday books. I'm obsessed with that book. And then I read another book by this author that was another romance, and it was just kind of okay. So when I went into this one, I went in with kind of lower expectations, and maybe that's why, but I just really enjoyed this one. It was very well done. This author is a Jewish author, but she also suffers from a chronic illness, and so all of her books have chronic illness representation in some way. And this one, our main character, it's a very long name, but basically it boils down to, as she explains in the book, it boils down to pelvic and incredible pelvic pain. So this one specifically, like the plot itself, it follows our main two characters who are the grandkids of these two men who started a baking company, and then they had like a falling out, and they've kind of been rivals ever since. He is basically forced by his grandfather to go undercover in the hopes of stealing this big recipe from the other place. What I assumed was the climactic moment at the end, that happens way earlier on, and it actually focuses on their romance, because she has a lot of hesitation when it comes to romance because of the pain she's in, because of the past relationship she's been in, and it's really her figuring out how to live with her illness. And so it's him being that very, very supportive partner that you need. And so it was just very well done, and I really enjoyed the plot and the story, and I thought that the couple was very cute, and I love seeing all the representation that this author has included, because every book so far has had a different form of representation. They're all under the umbrella of chronic illness, but they all are different forms of that. And this one was someone who was maybe on the earlier side of discovering it. So there's a wide range with this author, and I just really enjoyed this one. And like, I remember finishing it up while rocking Peanut to sleep. Like, it was just very well done. In August, my favorite book was Stuck With You by Ali Hazelwood, which was one of her 3 STEM novellas that she had. I think she's gotten more at this point, but at that time there were 3. And I picked one up and then ended up reading all of them. So this one follows our two main characters who, basically it's a forced proximity situation. They're stuck in an elevator and forced to relive a past relationship of sorts. They go on a date. It was great. She finds out some information about him and cuts him off, and he can't figure out what went wrong. And so the elevator breaks down and they're stuck in the elevator. And so it goes back and forth between present and past. And I just really liked the concept of that forced proximity. I am someone who's not the biggest fan of a timeline jump like that, but it worked really well, and I actually enjoyed it in this book. And I don't know, like, I picked up one novella, and the next thing I knew I had read all of them. This one, there was something about it that took that extra edge, that extra jump, that made it that extra little bit special. I just really enjoyed it. And novellas are hit or miss for me, and this one was like a major hit. So I really enjoyed it. All right, September, I read Never a Hero by Vanessa Lynn, which is the sequel to Only a Monster. I have raved about this series so many times, and this was the sequel, and I was super nervous about picking it up because the first one was so good, and I'd put too much time, I thought, between the first and second one, but the world is so unique that, like, I picked this up right away and was, like, instantly back there. And because of how the first one ended, I thought this was going to go in a very specific way, which is not my favorite thing, and they did it very differently. I just love this world. It takes place in London, and we follow our main character Joan. At least in the first book, we follow our main character Joan, who one day, due to some circumstances that go down, finds out that she is part monster. Now, the reason they're monsters is because they can time travel, but how they time travel is by stealing days, years, whatever, months off of humans. And so Joan is part human, and she's like, what? No, this is wrong. And so she ends up, basically, the person that she has a really big crush on, that she thought she was about to go on a big date with, turns out to be a monster hunter, and he's out to get her. And she teams up with a rival monster, a rival guy from a monster family, and her cousin, and they're trying to like run away. And then things happen at the end of that one, which sets off this one. And I loved every second of it, and I cannot wait. We finally got a cover for the third one. I'm just so excited. I love it so much. And I cannot wait because it's the trilogy. Like, this is the end of the trilogy, and it's going to be a favorite, I'm sure. But this one stood the test of time, in my opinion, because it's been like a year, I think, since I read the first one. And when I put that much time between first and second books, or honestly any books in a series, it usually does not end up going well for me. And it did this time. Oh, I loved it. In October, I binged the entire Good Girl's Guide to Murder series, and my favorite in that series was the first one, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. So that's my pick for October. It was perfect. It was good for like the thriller murder mystery vibe that I was in. I'm always in like a thriller mystery mood when it comes to the fall. I had my eye on this one, but I was going back and forth. I wasn't really sure how I felt, and I decided just to binge the entire series for a video. And I really enjoyed it. I thought it worked really well. I liked the plot of this one. We mainly follow our main character who is doing a project on a murder that was in her town. A girl was supposedly killed by her boyfriend, who then committed suicide. And she teams up with the brother, the younger brother of this boy, because she doesn't think that he actually did it. And so they end up working together, and it's mixed media because she's doing like, there's pictures and there's audio files and there's all these different elements to it. And as the series continues, it becomes a podcast. So there's even more audio files, but I just really liked the way it was done. And I listened to the audiobooks, which is a really good way to go because it's a full cast recording, and I really enjoyed that. But it's thriller without being scary. So if you're like me and a chicken and you don't like too scary, this has its moments, but it's more of like these two kids solving a mystery. So it's more mystery than thriller. And I just really enjoyed my time reading it. I wasn't really sure what I was going to get into, and it actually was really good. And in November, which I'm not sure if you will see my wrap up before this or not, but either way, I ended up binging the entire Dragori series by Ben Alderson, the first one being Cloaked in Shadow, and that was my favorite in the series. And honestly, that's the only thing that I read in November was that series. So the first one in that series was really good. It follows our main character, Zach, who is an elf. Actually, the entire world is made up of elves. There's these 3 different types of elves, and they're all based on how they bleed, if they bleed gold, red, or black. And so he gets summoned by the king with a bunch of other people, and it's to be part of this army that is this made up of shapeshifters. So he brings a lot of people to his castle, and he, under the kind of disguise, or he says it's for his son, the prince's birthday celebration. And then he kind of distributes this drug, if you will, that does not affect people who have this like shape-shifting gene. Well, Zach does not. He has magic, but he's been told to kind of keep it a secret, and he does not have the ability to shapeshift, but he does not fall asleep like the other people who shapeshift. And so he's kind of like forced into this army and forced into this court where people are expecting him to shapeshift, and he can't. And he becomes really close with the prince. It's way more than that. It just kind of keeps going. I do like I said an entire vlog on this, and I spoiled a lot of the series. So if you don't care about spoilers, go check that out. But I really enjoyed it. It was a very good like YA fantasy. It had a lot of the tropes that you would expect in a YA fantasy book, but this author makes his stories queer, so there's always a male-male main romance in the plot, and so I really enjoyed seeing that. I liked seeing the representation, and like as the series continues, the representation just grows tenfold, but there's always that male-male romance at the heart of the story. But it's a fantasy, and it was fun, and it's kind of like a little bit of a higher fantasy, and I just really enjoyed it. So that was my favorite in November. We'll see what December has in store, but that is a look at my favorites every single month this year so far. So I hope that you guys enjoyed. Please let me know, as always, if you have read any of the books that I mentioned, or if you are like me and you have like favorite books by month, or maybe just list some of your favorite books that you've read. Just a handful so far this year. And of course, don't forget to check out the link down below to check out Ana Luisa if you need some fun gifting ideas, because honestly, I've worked with them a lot, and I genuinely wear their stuff like all the time. So go ahead and check that out. But if you like this video, and I very much hope that you did, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe down below if you'd like to be part of this awesome growing family. I've also got all my social media down there, as well as other fun bookish links, so check all that out, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!